Hey guys, welcome back to Release the Craftin. We're still here with another episode of Storycraft. And continuing our tales of terror, our tales of the paranormal and the spooky here on the channel, I'm going to tell you guys one by the master of horror himself, Edgar Allan Poe. Edgar Allan Poe is one of my favorite authors of all time. I've visited the subject quite a bit on my channel here, and I intend to visit it again in the future. I'm going to tell you guys my second favorite short story from Poe. Not my first favorite, which is strange, but that's the nature of things. But before that, just a little bit of business off the top. I want to say thank you guys on Patreon for supporting me there. I really appreciate your faces. If you haven't already, you can check it out. Also, Patreon just rolled out a feature where you can follow somebody for free and get updates, and I haven't worked with that feature a lot, but somebody has already followed me there on the just on the followers thing. So like, if you guys want to check that out, I think I'm going to start rolling out like updates and notifications and when stuff drops to the shop on Patreon for the free supporters to find out information as soon as it comes up there as well. And then I wanted to say I am still collecting the stories for our big October spooky special, and I need help coming up with a name for that, you guys, because my working title is like 12 words long, and that's not a snappy title. So if you have any suggestions on what I should call our big user listener story submission Ghost Holidays Spectacular, let me know, because I have no ideas at this point, and I am open to any and all suggestions. But I'm going to continue accepting submissions for that all the way through, let's say, the 11th. So you have till the 11th to send me your story if you haven't already and you've been wanting to, like, now is the time. After the 11th, if you send me your story, don't feel bad. I will read your story on a different spooky special. If we do another one later next year or next Halloween, I will read your story then. But if you would really like it to make it onto the show this year, send it to me before the 11th, because I got a lot of stories to read and record and put together. Also need to figure out how long the episode needs to be so I know how much to record. So I need a little time to do that. So that's what we're going to do. Those are the things. That's the business going forward. Now we're rolling into this. So a little bit about Edgar Allan Poe. If you were not familiar, he's an American-born author who was born in Boston in 1809. He had a very sad life, a very sad, very depressing life, and that really influenced his work. He was surrounded by death a lot, and abandonment, and all sorts of issues. He had some substance abuse issues, some gambling issues, but he was also, like, super romantic on top of that. So the man was just in love with love and also death a little bit. And it just added into this very complex, very sad, tragic, misunderstood story of a man who died mysteriously in 1849. So he was only 40 when he died. And, like, you guys, they lived really rough in that time, because if you've ever seen any photos of Edgar Allan Poe, he looks rough. The man had a rough life, and he was only 40, so that's crazy to me. And I watched something like years ago on the History Channel. It was like a History Channel special about Poe, because it came out around the time The Raven came out with John Cusack, which is a great movie. If you haven't seen it already, I really enjoy it. I think he really enjoyed the role, so you can tell he's having fun in the movie. Where they talked about he may have actually been murdered because the man talked so much shit. He talked so much shit. He wrote 1 million checks that his ass couldn't cash all the time. And I just love that for him. I kind of just love that, like, ability to swing for it and hope that, like, nobody catches you slipping. But they did catch him slipping a lot. And so it's kind of believed that either he died from some mysterious health complication that they can't find out with forensics years later, or from the substances that he may have been taking at the time, self-medicating with, or someone might have murdered him. And well, all of those are sad answers to a very sad, tragic life, and it's kind of unfortunate. But he was a prolific author. He was also an editor, a critic, and, like, a poet. Like I said, he was super romantic, so he wrote lots of poetry. And I absolutely love his work. There is not very many bits of his work that I don't enjoy. Which brings me to today. I'm telling you guys the story of the Cask of Amontillado, and that is my second favorite short story by Poe. And the reason I'm telling you my second favorite short story is because I'm still pretty stressed out, and this story wakes up my inner like garbage troll in my brain, and every time I read it, I go like it might be like a testament to how dark my humor can get sometimes, but since the first time I read this story to today, even this story makes me like troll laugh, and it's very spooky. It gives a lot of existential dread. It's not scary in the way most typical like ghostly type horrors are, but it's very scary in the concepts that are being explored. And you would think I would be more like, ooh, this is too spooky, but I'm not. I chuckle inside and I enjoy it, and that's why it's my second favorite story. My favorite Poe story is actually The Fall of the House of Usher. But that's like a vibe. It's like a mood. I have to be in a certain mood to read it, and it's also a little bit depressing. And I'm trying not to be depressed while I'm stressed, or more so. So we're gonna read the one that's that tickles my inner troll. So that's what we're doing, because I think this will be fun for a section of you, and it'll be poignant for the other section of you. So I think this is going to be a good story to hit. Also, I'm going to apologize up top. I'm going to pronounce everything wrong, and yeah, we're just going to roll with the punches on this one because it is what it is. So, jumping into it, The Cask of Amontillado was first published in 1846. It was actually only published 3 years before he died, which is also crazy to me. It was first published in Goody's Lady's Book, and you guys just wait. If you have not heard this story before, prepare yourself. So, The Cask of Amontillado by Edgar Allan Poe. The 1,000 injuries of Fortunato I had borne as best I could, but when he ventured upon insult, I vowed revenge. You, who so well know the nature of my soul, will not suppose, however, that gave utterance to a threat. At length, I would be avenged. This was a point definitely settled, but the very definitiveness with which it is resolved precluded the idea of risk. I must not only punish, but punish with impunity. A wrong is unredressed when retribution overtakes its redresser. It is equally unredressed when the avenger fails to make himself felt as such to him who has done the wrong. It must be understood that neither by word nor deed had I given Fortunato cause to doubt my goodwill. I continued, as was my into smile in his face, and he did not perceive that my smile now was at the thought of his immolition. He had a weak point, this Fortunato. Although, in other regards, he was a man to be respected and even feared, he prided himself on his connoisseurship in wine. Few Italians have the true virtuoso spirit. For the most part, their enthusiasm is adopted to suit the time and opportunity, to practice imposture upon the British and Australian millionaires. In painting and gemmery, Fortunato, like his countrymen, was a quack. But in the matter of old wines, he was sincere. In this respect, I did not differ from him materially. I was skillful in the Italian vintages myself, and bought largely whenever I could. It was about dusk one evening during the supreme madness of the carnival season that I encountered my friend. He accosted me with excessive warmth, for he had been drinking much. The man wore motley. He had on tight-fitting party-striped dress, and his head was surmounted by the conical cap and bells. I was so pleased to see him that I thought I should never have done wringing his hand. I said to him, "My dear Fortunato, you are luckily met. How remarkably well you are looking today. But I have received a pipe of what amasses for Amontillado, and I have my doubts." "How?" said he. "Amontillado? A pipe? Impossible! And in the middle of Carnival?" "I have my doubts," I replied, "and I was silly enough to pay the full Amontillado price without consulting you in the matter. You were not to be found, and I was fearful of losing a bargain." "Amontillado? I have my doubts. Amontillado? And I must satisfy them. Amontillado? As you are engaged, I am on my way to Lucrece. If anyone has a critical turn, it is he. He will tell me, Lucrece cannot tell Amontillado from Sherry. And yet some fools will have it that his taste is a match for your own. Come, let us go. Whither? To your vaults. My friend, no, I will not impose upon your good nature. I perceive you have an engagement. Lucrece, I have no engagement. Come. My friend, no, it is not the engagement, but the severe cold with which I perceive you are afflicted. The vaults are insufferably damp. They are encrusted with nitre. Let us go, nevertheless. The cold is merely nothing. Amontillado, you have been imposed upon. And as for Lucrece, he cannot distinguish sherry from Amontillado. Thus speaking, Fortunato possessed himself of my arm, and putting on a mask of black silk and drawing a roquelaire closely about my person, I suffered him to hurry me to my palazzo. There were no attendants at home. They had absconded to make merry in honor of the time. I had told them that I should not return until morning, and had given them explicit orders not to stir from the house. These orders were sufficient, I well knew, to ensure their immediate disappearance, one and all, as soon as my back was turned. I took 2 of their sconces from Flambeau, and giving one to Fortunato, bowed him through several suites of rooms to the archway that led into the vaults. I passed down a long and winding staircase, requesting him to be cautious as he followed. We came at length to the foot of the descent, and stood together upon the damp ground in the catacombs of the Montresors. The gait of my friend was unsteady, and the bells upon his cap jingled as he strode. The pipe, he said. It is farther on, said I, but observe the white web-work which gleams from these cavern walls. He turned towards me, and I looked into my eyes with 2 filmy orbs that distilled the rheum of intoxication. Nitre, he asked at length. Nitre, I replied. How long have you had that cough? Ugh, ugh, ugh. Hug, 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 hug. My poor friend found it impossible to reply for many minutes. It is nothing, he said at last. Come, I said with decision. We will go back. Your health is precious. You are rich, respected, admired, beloved. You are happy as once I was. You are a man to be missed. For me it is no matter. We will go back. You will be ill, and I cannot be responsible. Besides, there is Lucrece. Enough, he said. The cough's a mere nothing. It will not kill me. I shall not die of a cough. True, true, I replied, and indeed I had no intention of alarming you unnecessarily. But you should use all proper caution. A draught of this Medoc will help defend us from the damps. Here I knocked off the neck of a bottle, which I drew from a long row of its fellows that lay upon the mould. Drink, I said, presenting him the wine. He raised it to his lips with a leer. He paused and nodded to me familiarly, while his bells jingled. I drink, he said, to the buried that repose around us, and I to your long life. He again took my arm, and we proceeded. These vaults, he said, are extensive. The Montresors, I replied, were a great and numerous family. I forget your arms. A huge human foot d'or in a field azure, the foot crushes a serpent rampant whose fangs are embedded in the heel. And the motto? Nemo me impune lacest. Good, he said. The wine sparkled in his eyes and the bells jingled. My own fancy grew warm with the Medoc. We had passed through long walls of piled skeletons, with casks and puncheons intermingling, into the inmost recesses of the catacombs. I paused again, and this time I made bold to seize Fortunato by an arm above the elbow. The nitre, I said, see, it increases. It hangs like moss upon the vaults. We are below the river's bed. The drops of moisture trickle among the bones. Come, we will go back ere it is too late. Your cough. It is nothing, he said. Let us go on. But first, another draught of the Medoc. I broke and reached him a flagon of de Grave. He emptied it at a breath. His eyes flashed with a fierce light. He laughed and threw the bottle upwards with a gesticulation I did not understand. I looked at him surprised. He repeated the movement. A grotesque one. You do not comprehend, he said. Not I replied. Then you are not of the Brotherhood. How? You were not of the Masons. Yes, I said. Yes. You? Impossible. A Mason? A mason, I replied. A sign, he said, a sign. It is this, I answered, producing from beneath the folds of my roquelaire a trowel. You jest, he exclaimed, recoiling a few paces. But let us proceed to the Amontillado. Be it so, I said, replacing the tool beneath the cloak and again offering my arm. He leaned upon it heavily. We continued our route in search of the Amontillado. We passed through a range of low arches, descended, passed on, and descending again, arrived at a deep crypt, in which the foulness of the air caused our flambeau rather to glow than flame. At the most remote end of the crypt there appeared another, less spacious. Its walls had been lined with human remains, piled to the vault overhead, in the fashion of the great catacombs of Paris. 3 sides of this interior crypt were still ornamented in this manner. From the 4th side, the bones had been thrown down and lay promiscuously upon the floor, forming at one point a mound of some size. Within the wall thus exposed by the displacing of the bones, we perceived a still interior crypt or recess, in depth about 4 feet, in width 3, in height 6 or 7. It seemed to have been constructed for no especial use within itself, but formed merely the interval between 2 of the colossal supports of the roof of the catacombs, and was backed by one of their circumscribing walls of solid granite. It was in vain that Fortunato, uplifting his dull torch, endeavored to pry into the depth of the recess. Its termination the feeble light did not enable us to see. Proceed, I said. Herein is the Amontillado. As for Lucrezi, he is an ignoramus, interrupted my friend, as he stepped unsteadily forward, while I followed immediately at his heels. In niche, and finding an instant, he had reached the extremity of the niche, and finding his progress arrested by the rock, stood stupidly bewildered. A moment more, and I had fettered him to the granite. In its surface were 2 iron staples, distant from each other about 2 feet, horizontally. From one of these depended a short chain, from the other a padlock. Throwing the links about his waist, it was but the work of a few seconds to secure it. He was too much astounded to resist. Withdrawing the key, I stepped back from the recess. Pass your hand, I said, over the wall. You cannot help feeling the nitre. Indeed, it is very damp. Once more, let me implore you to return. No? Then I must positively leave you. But I must first render you all the little attentions in my power. The Amontillado, ejaculated my friend, and not yet recovered from his astonishment. True, I replied. The Amontillado. As I said these words, I busied myself among the pile of bones of which I had spoken. Throwing them aside, I soon uncovered a quantity of some building stone and mortar. With these materials, and with the aid of my trowel, I began vigorously to wall up the entrance of the niche. I had scarcely laid the first tier of the masonry when I discovered that the intoxication of Fortunato had in great measure worn off. The earliest indication I had of this was a low moaning cry from the depth of the recess. It was not the cry of a drunken man. There was then a long and obstinate silence. I laid the 2nd tier, and the 3rd, and the 4th, and then I heard the furious vibrations of the chain. The noise lasted for several minutes, during which, that I might hearken to it with more satisfaction, I ceased my labors and sat upon the bones. When at last the clinking subsided, I resumed the trowel, and finished without interruption the 5th, the 6th, and the 7th tier. The wall was now nearly upon a level with my breast. I again paused, and holding the flambeau over the mason work, threw a few feeble rays of light upon the figure within. A succession of loud and shrill screams, bursting suddenly from the throat of the chained form, seemed to thrust me violently back. For a brief moment I hesitated. I trembled. Unsheathing my rapier, I began to grope with it about the recess, but the thought of an instant reassured me. I placed my hand upon the solid fabric of the catacombs, and felt satisfied. I reapproached the wall. I replied to the yells of him who clamored. I re-echoed. I aided. I surpassed them in volume and in strength. I did this, and the clamorer grew still. It was now midnight, and my task was drawing to a close. I had completed the 8th, and the 9th, and the 10th tier. I had finished a portion of the last and the 11th. There remained but a single stone to be fitted and plastered in. I struggled with its weight. I placed it partially in its destined position, but now there came from out the niche a low laugh that erected the hairs upon my head. It was succeeded by a sad voice, which I had difficulty in recognizing as that of the noble Fortunato. The voice said, "Ha, ha, ha, he, he, a very good joke indeed, an excellent jest. We will have many a rich laugh about it at the palazzo, over our wine." The Amontillado, I said. Yes, the Amontillado. But is it not getting late? Will they not be awaiting us at the Palazzo, the Lady Fortunato and the rest? Let us be gone. Yes, I said, let us be gone. For the love of God, Montresor. Yes, I said, for the love of God. But to these words I hearkened in vain for a reply. I grew patient, I called aloud. Fortunato? No answer. I called again. Fortunato! No answer still. I thrust a torch through the remaining aperture and let it fall within. There came forth in return only a jingling of the bells. My heart grew sick. It was the dampness of the catacombs that made it so. I hastened to make an end of my labor. I forced the last stone into its position. I plastered it up. Against the new masonry, I re-erected the old rampart of bones. For the half of a century, no mortal has disturbed them. In pace requiescat. Okay, so that is our story. I hope that you guys enjoyed this one. I enjoyed it too. A couple of things. I know that I stumbled with all of the Latin and all of the French and all of the Italian, so apologies. But I had to look up a couple of things because I had some questions and I learned some stuff. So I want to share some facts that I learned with you guys. The niter that they keep talking about in the catacombs is actually saltpeter. It's potassium nitrate. And I guess it accumulates in those damp, murky places. I don't really understand how that works. I had some questions about that, but I guess it can cause irritation, especially in like caves and stuff like that where it's gross and moldy and damp. It can cause some irritation, which would aggravate your coughing if you were already sick, and poor Fortunato was already sick. So yeah, that's why they kept talking about the niter, and the deeper they went, the more niter was on the wall. And then I want to say, like, I like this story because it's not like the Telltale Heart where you're listening to, like, an unreliable narrator tell you a story that's completely, like, mad in his head. He doesn't have the same delusions as the narrator for the Telltale Heart does. It's basically just a story about how, for whatever reason, we never find out, Montresor, the narrator, has been, like, wrongfully insulted by Fortunato. He never brings up why, so it's just open to speculation. He does this whole crime because Fortunato insulted him in some way, and he was not going to like let that slide. But he does it so like craftily and cleverly to lure Fortunato in underneath the guise of good faith, calling up his rivalry with another like big wine guy to make him jealous, so that he wants to be the one who tastes the mysterious Cask of Amontillado that he never gets to have, by the way. But, like, he does all of this intentionally, as opposed to, like, in the Telltale Heart, where the narrator's sort of crazy, a little bit not altogether, and he ends up murdering the old man because of, like, an unfathomable obsession with the sound of his beating heart. It sounds like just something was really triggering for that narrator. But in this one, like, our narrator Montresor is just like, no, this guy pissed me off. He insulted me, and this is exactly how I killed him. And no one will ever find out. And I've set everything up to go all of my way, and no one will ever suspect me because I have never been anything but a good friend to this man. And we never find out what it is. And that's like probably one of my favorite parts, is that it's sort of left up to you to decide, like, what could have possibly driven him to this that was so insulting, but not so bad that Fortunato never suspected him. He never even suspected him after he got chained inside of this little wall, like, hole in the wall. He didn't suspect him at all. He was just like, okay. But about the wine, though. And then eventually was like, oh, this is a funny joke, but, like, it's over now, right? And that's when he starts to actually have doubts. So that's when Fortunato actually starts to feel some kind of way. So, interestingly, there's a moment in the story where Fortunato brings up that Montresor's, like, he doesn't remember Montresor's family crest, and they go into description about it. But the house words for my Game of Thrones heads, the house words for Montresor's family, and again, I'm going to butcher this, is Nemo me impuni lasses, this is hard to say, lecessit, whatever it is, it actually means no one attacks me with impunity. So it's like in his family. It's like a little nod that Poe added in there that like his family name also means like nobody gets away from wronging me, and that's exactly how he felt. Montresor took that to heart. And at the end of the story, after he's walled Fortunato in there, he adds another line in Latin, in pace requiescat. According to Google, it is requiescat in pace, which means rest in peace. So after he walls him up, he basically says rip. That's what rest in peace stands for. That's what the Latin for rest in peace was before it was rest in peace, I guess. I don't really know how words work or language. Just repeating what Google's telling me right now. But those were things I never really realized about the story. I didn't really understand that. I never looked up like the Latin as a kid, and I first heard this story in English, and my English teacher also didn't tell us what the Latin stood for. So that was just an interesting little thing for me to learn. And I don't know why, like, I think it's just the sort of the cheesy way that the narrator, Montresor, like, speaks the entire time, where he's just like, yeah, totally, this wine, like, we're getting it the whole way down into this catacomb. And, like, it's a catacomb. It's not a wine cellar. It's a catacomb that he stores wine in. So there's a bunch of skeletons from all of his family, everyone who's ever been buried down there, and the deeper they go, the more the bodies get, like, piled on top of each other, so it ends up looking like the Paris catacombs the deeper they get. If you've ever seen any pictures of that, you can Google those. They're spooky. But like they keep going down, and it keeps getting like more full of the niter, which is like killing Fortunato to step into because it's just aggravating his cough. And there's just more and more skeletons and bones everywhere they go as they get deeper. But intermixed with all these bones is a bunch of wine, which is what keeps Fortunato going. It keeps him from being, like, suspicious. Is because every couple of feet, in between all the bones, there's wine. Which, is pretty metal, I'm not gonna lie. I don't know if it would be for me. I think I would just, maybe just have a wine cellar separate from my catacombs. That's just me. It's just me. I don't want to go underground for things, I have strong feelings about being underground in catacombs. That's spooky, and I don't want to be there. But, yeah, it might be a little bit twisted, but this is my second favorite story, and I'm really excited to share it with you guys. I hope that you guys enjoyed my reading of it. I hope it wasn't too rough. Some of those words I've never said out loud before, and I'm going to give myself the grace and the permission to sort of let that go, because you got to say something out loud wrong the first time, right? You have to learn how to say it right. And so, yeah, we're just going to move on, and I'm not going to dwell on that. Let me know what your guys' favorite Poe story is in the comments below. Actually, and you might have recalled, I actually really do love this story. I actually made it into a sliding pocket in my Poe journal. I made a little brick wall, and it slid to reveal the little skeleton behind the wall. And it's directly inspired by this story. I absolutely love this story. It stays rent-free in my brain a lot, and I don't know why, because I've read basically everything Poe has written, and minus a couple of stories. I've never read Murder in the Rue Morgue, and I need to, but I haven't done that. But I don't know, this one just sort of floats around every so often, and I just go, oh, poor Fortunato, and then I just keep moving on. I don't know why. But I will say, another little fact I learned about this while reading, not about this story, but about Poe in general, and this is something I had never really considered or thought about, because mystery is not my favorite, like, literature genre, but, he's thought to be, the inventor of the modern detective story, and if you look at his work, it kind of predates Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's Sherlock by quite a bit, because those ones came out like in the late 1800s, and Poe was alive in the early 1800s. So there's a lot of basis on that fact, and I think it's interesting. If you read any of those detective type stories, they are sort of the blueprint for the stories that would come after, and that's just really fascinating to me, because he's not known for being a detective mystery author, so much as he's known for being a gothic, like, horror writer, inventor of the macabre. Also, in the article that I was reading, they said that he was also an early pioneer of the science fiction genre in general. So, like, that's also really cool, and something I don't think a lot of people talk about. Like, the man was absolutely influential in terms of, like, literature, and we're still talking about him now, so, you know, like, the impact is still felt and still continued. But yeah, I can continue to fangirl over Poe. I love Poe so much. We might have to do, like, a Poe month. I'm thinking about doing a Poe month because I'm thinking of taking, like, a low-key vacation, not a vacation, but, like, time off in November. So what I'll probably do in November is just Storycraft and the stuff I have for Patreon for my patrons, and everything else will just have to wait until December, and I'll try to come back with something really cool in December, like a challenge or something. I think that'll be fun, like a Yuletide challenge. But yes, because I have found myself in a position where I am very stressed and it's making me feel very low creatively. I have sort of endeavored to get through the month, and maybe we'll just do Poe a November, Povember. And I'll read some more short stories by him and do some more Poe story crafts for that month, and that'll be like a low effort way for me to do Storycraft, and then I can just sort of focus on like recharging my batteries. Let me know what you guys think about that. I think that's a fun idea. Povember is a fun idea. So maybe we'll do that. And yeah, that's going to be it for me, you guys, for today. I will be back next week, as per usual. If you made it to the end of the video, I appreciate your faces, and I'll catch you guys all in the next one. Until then, happy crafting. Bye!